Good morning. Welcome to our Igniting the Spark series. My name is Manpriya Ailwadhi, a Senior Paralegal here at Ignition Law. Today, I'm joined by Charlie Byrd, founder and managing director at the Aviary Group. Charlie has a depth of experience previously working at JP Morgan, the British Army, and now Aviary Group. Welcome, Charlie. How are you doing today?
Hi, Manpriya. Yeah, really well, thanks. Thank you very much for having me.
Good, good. We're glad to have you today. We're super excited to learn more about you, the company, and your experience in terms of working with us. So I'll get straight into the questions.
Great.
So briefly, if you can tell us more about Avery Group, what they do, and the company's purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the Ava Group is a spin out of mining and minerals capabilities. So we scale advanced processing capability for critical minerals. Now, not the base metals that we see mined all over the world by the massive household names and traders, and not also the precious metals, the golds, the silvers, the platinums.
Mhm.
We focus on a really specific niche of minerals that are essential to defense, the energy transition, advanced manufacturing, where there is no shortage of these minerals globally. Rare earths aren't rare, but also when do critical minerals become critical? Because what we're seeing across this ecosystem is there are loads of mine deposits offering the raw materials, the 50% concentrates,
Mhm.
but there's no capability outside of China to really refine that material into the 99.9% purity that our industrial applications need, whether that's car manufacturing, whether that's data centers, or whether that's the stuff that underpins our national security, drones, ammunition, armor. That capability to
Mhm.
refine and process doesn't exist in the West. So
Mhm.
the Avery Group spun out as the top co of a group of companies: American Mineral
Mhm.
Processing, British Mineral Processing, and German Mineral Processing. And we're now building that processing capability onshore in those countries to take the readily available mining feedstock, the raw material, and then to refine it into the 99% very high purity finished products that can actually be used in industry.
That's really interesting. So
It's a bit different.
So, what originally sparked the idea to set up this business?
So the catalyst was seeing firsthand just how exposed our critical supply chains sort of really are, particularly for the defence grade materials. And you said I started my life in the British Army. It's, obviously something that we are very proud to support is that national security infrastructure. And we noticed that for years, that conversation had focused on mining new deposits. There's always another project coming online to open a mine, but there was far less attention being paid to processing
Mhm.
and the capability to turn that mined material into a usable material for industry.
Mhm.
And that's where the real control and leverage sits. That gap between the geopolitical necessity and the industrial reality, mine deposits, was the spark for us. And so we knew that we had scalable technology. We knew that we could provide that high purity processed capability in trusted jurisdictions. And so we also knew that if we spun out and took control of our own destiny rather than being dependent on existing constraints, investors, markets, we could solve a genuinely strategic problem. So we did. We took the risk, and a year ago we spun out, and we've developed that capability and that science so much in the last 12 months that we're now in a really credible place to solve that problem, which is exciting.
It definitely does sound exciting, and if I may say myself, very fascinating. So, I'm sure you've had a lot of challenges during this time. So, what's been the toughest you've experienced so far?
Yeah, I think there's several. And boiling it down to a single challenge is probably quite tricky. I think there's such a thematic focus on critical minerals, defense, moving away from the the Chinese stranglehold on the supply chain, but you're dealing with massive institutions, governments. And so I think a large problem that we've faced is while our science is completely sound, we've found it quite hard to build credibility as a startup at the pace of that geopolitical demand. So those governments, the defense primes, the investors, everyone says that they want solutions yesterday. They want to invest in SMEs. They want to see small businesses getting access to this large strategic ecosystem that we operate in. And delivering that credibility, proving out the science, de-risking the process, executing our business plan properly, we've done. But reassuring those large ecosystem, those large institutional players that what we've done is credible has at times been an uphill battle. And I think the good news is we've kind of now crossed that bridge and are starting to be taken quite seriously, particularly in the US. They're really moving at speed, and also continental Europe. Europe is really rallying to this challenge and supporting SMEs.
So in terms of advice that you would give to other entrepreneurs and leaders, what would you suggest?
I don't think they need advice from me, but I would say be relentlessly honest with yourself. Imposter syndrome. It's funny. I have always worked for very large institutions, the British Army, JP Morgan, private equity fund, etc. And that brand brings with it strength and sort of resilience that gives you a toolbox to do your job. Suddenly you go out, set up on your own, you're this very small fish in a very big pond. Yeah. And imposter syndrome is really alive and real. And now I'm a founder, you suddenly share with other founders, everyone has that same struggle. And so I think the advice I would give is just be relentlessly honest with yourself, with your team, your partners, your investors, especially where you're in complex operating environments, capital intensive business decisions, because credibility will always compound much faster than optimism. In a world where we live in an echo chamber of social media, LinkedIn, there's become a real expectation that if you tell everyone you're doing a good job, then the business will actually drag itself forward. And we've really focused on doing the opposite of that. We've planned to be incredibly resilient. We've been very honest with ourselves and with our key stakeholders about how we're achieving milestones, how we're progressing. And we've actually completely avoided posting online. We don't even have a website because we didn't want to fall foul of that echo chamber as a small fish in a big pond. And what that has allowed us to do is build a really strong operating model, business plan that is based on science and genuine capability and opportunity. So now, in the next few weeks, as we start to sort of emerge from the shadows, become more publicly profiled, what we're saying will actually sound true. Right. And we operate in a market, in an ecosystem that there is a lot of marketing and words involved. We're very proud that we've been relentlessly honest and we're now delivering results rather than just talking about it.
That's a really good piece of advice. Thank you for that. In terms of achievements, again, I'm sure you've experienced many. What would you say, or what's your most proudest achievement and why?
I think an explicit, every founder's greatest concern is getting that idea off the ground, taking it from a concept into reality. And so the explicit achievement was raising our seed round. Because no one can deny we had a real success. We found an incredible couple of investors who really backed us and believe in what we're trying to do. And it created a very explicit line in the sand. But I think that probably comes on to a slightly more holistic achievement, which is actually that has turned the idea into a ratified, scalable process. And we can now actually go and achieve what we set out to do a year ago. Yeah, I think it's again, imposter syndrome. It takes a huge amount to look in the mirror and go, what have we achieved? And we've really tried to avoid acknowledging too much of that too early. We know what we've got to go and do. And yeah, hopefully we can re-record this in a couple of years having done it.
Well, we look forward to that. If you had to start everything all over again, what piece of advice would you give your younger self?
Surround yourself with people. Move faster on people decisions. The right people accelerate everything. And I'm not just talking about employees per se. We're really lucky. We've hired out. We're a team of 8. The whole team is awesome. We deliver so much with each other day in, day out. But also, we are supported by fantastic investors, fantastic consultants, great supporting functions, legal, accountants, all of that stuff. We initially were perhaps slow to commit the spend to some of those people. And now that we have found those great people, we've actually noticed that they can accelerate everything. That skill set is really powerful. Technical problems are solvable. You're actually very rarely in control of that timeline. Whereas investing in your team, committing to your people, committing to those that support you has really expedited our success. And so I think I would probably say you've got to invest in your growth. And I would have told myself to get on with it. But then we've done a huge amount in 12 months. So maybe we've not done it that badly.
That's a really good piece of advice. So what led you to work with Ignition Law?
We needed a legal partner who understood that the Aviary Group was not a small linear startup. It is highly strategic. It's multi-jurisdictional. It operates at that intersection between sort of technology, government, defense, and then obviously there's the commercial exposure to fundraising, to investors, to reporting. So we knew that we needed a large law firm that could rise to that multi-jurisdictional challenge. But transparently, we also knew that we were a very small fish in a very big pond. And so the risk of being overlooked or not prioritized by the really large law firms was significant. And so it was actually through a referral from one of those very large law firms, which we hope to, maybe work with one day. We were referred to Ignition, and Ignition demonstrated almost immediately that they could operate at that high level. They could sit the other side of the table from these very large law firms and commercial institutions and represent us to an incredibly high standard, whilst also providing that incredibly personable, very focused, real advice to us, a small fish, in actually what they made feel was a very small pond. So it was just it was a great partnership. And yeah, we were pleased to be introduced.
That makes me very happy to hear. So how did Ignition support you through this, and what difference did we make?
So I feel like I've got to give Lottie a shout out. Lottie was the Ignition
She's
lawyer
great.
yeah, she is a complete superstar. So she was my clarity. I have been really lucky to have operated in lots of different employment scenarios, a number of different industries, ecosystems, etc. But ultimately, I'd never set up a company. I'd never gone through the minefield that is jurisdiction, regulation, the paperwork mountain that it takes to incorporate a company, but then also raise a significant amount of capital from very commercial, strategic, ultra high net worth investors. Lottie was my sounding board. So she brought this clarity and the commercially realistic advice where what appears perhaps quite a complex situation and could have really slowed progress down, she made it simple. I think as a result, with that, she helped me, or Ignition helped me kind of structure, protect, advance the business whilst being focused on executing the inception and the fundraise. So yeah, I think what does Ignition bring? It brought clarity without making things unnecessarily burdensome and complex.
Thank you for that. And in terms of, I feel like you've already ish answered this, but what do you value most about working with Ignition?
Think I can't just answer that with the word Lottie. So no, the whole Ignition brand, all of, the COSEC team, the paralegal team, the entire organization that supported me through Lottie. I think it was that combination of the technical legal strength, just with pragmatism, understanding a founder's needs, that my capacity as, at the time, a very, very small team was limited. Speed matters, but also getting it right and sometimes saying to me, slow down. I think that was the bit that kind of Ignition really brought. And I think that balance, from having now worked with a few other legal teams, legal firms, often on the other side of the table, that balance between legal strength and pragmatic advice versus slowing down and executing at the right time is rare. And to a founder, where you do feel quite isolated, is incredibly valuable.
That's really good to hear. In terms of like your motivations, both inside and outside of work, what keeps your spark alive?
Wow, yeah, good question. What really matters ultimately? So, a large part of why I span out of my previous employer, decided to set up the Aviary Group, and now we've launched American Mineral Processing, British Mineral Processing, is because I felt, and my team feel, that what we're building genuinely matters. This wasn't just an opportunity to run an investment, build a company that made the most of a great thematic investment opportunity, generate a return for our investors, and walk into the sunset. It's really, really important. The sovereign capability, the national security aspect that underpinning this supply chain brings to the West is so important. And that will always be a driver for us. We really want to deliver this solution. So that, I would say, that's what really keeps the spark alive within work. Is it what we're doing? We think really matters. Outside of work, cliche answer, but family. I think the only reason anyone goes to work is to provide opportunity, and that then provision, who you're providing for, changes depending on your personal circumstances. For me, that's family, and being able to work hard and provide in part for my family, but also by running your own business, being able to control and spend more time with my family, that helps you to really stay motivated. Because ultimately, the more I personally put in to this business, and the more the team personally puts into this business, the more the business can then give back to our families. And, I think that helps you keep grounded, keep driving forwards. Being part of a large institution, you can sometimes lose sight of that.
No, that's completely true. Nothing's more important than family. And final question, what book, video, TED Talk, quote, or a single piece of advice would you share with the SME community?
Okay, so this question I got told about before, and thank goodness I did. I actually had to think about it. I'm not one to read books endlessly, although I am reading a really good book at the moment by Ed Conway. It's called A Material World, and it's very specific to the business and what we're trying to do at the moment. It's all about that supply chain, but
I'm
it
going to
doesn't
note
really
that
give
down.
advice to anyone unless you happen to be setting up a critical mineral processing business. So not that useful. And so I sort of reflected, and I think that the one piece of advice I would give to founders, to other people probably suffering from the same imposter syndrome that I suffer from every single day, is hard problems are a privilege.
Mhm.
Because if you're working on something genuinely difficult, that genuinely matters, and you have a hard problem that you can't solve, or you've got to do something extraordinary to solve, then that means that what you're working on is important. It's either important to you, or it's important to the people that you're working to solve a problem for. Very few people sort of are equipped to step back and acknowledge that hard problems are a privilege throughout life. And I think maintaining that perspective is really, really useful. So embrace it.
I think that's a really useful piece of advice. Thank you so much for that. I'm certainly going to take that away. Charlie, thank you so much for your time today. I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot about you, the company. I certainly have. So thank you for choosing us as well. It's been a pleasure working with you and hopefully to continue working with yourself. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks very much. That was great.